Welcome everybody to InfluxDays. This is our fifth, maybe, InfluxDays in North America, and super pleased to have you here. And it's certainly our largest attended InfluxDays, so awesome to have everybody online. Let me jump right into it with a couple of thank yous. So first of all, you saw the scrolling that Chris had put up before of all the different community sponsors and people who added to the code and who have helped us to evolve the project. And I just wanted to always first and foremost thank those folks. But one of the things that people don't see is that there are individuals associated with large enterprises who have had to give their permission to let people participate in Influx and contribute code. And I wanted to thank the contributors at Alibaba, at Comcast, at Target, at VMware, at Intel, at Cisco, at Amazon, at Sumo Logic, even at Datadog, who have contributed to Influx. It's we really appreciate your participation, and we very much are committed to this project. And it's great to see how many corporations have stood behind us. So super appreciative. But for today, I wanted to thank our sponsors. Obviously, the three cloud providers who enabled us a marketplace for people to sign up for our cloud native product, AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. We so appreciate your sponsorship. And Cribble, who is pioneering new ways to ingest logs into other databases, time series databases, as well as search databases. And Nortal, who's doing a tremendous amount of consulting around Influx and IoT. Really appreciate your sponsorship. Without you guys, these events don't really happen. So let's jump into community for a sec. So what is the InfluxDB community, and what is the state of it, and who are we today? There are roughly 450,000, roughly 450,800 InfluxDB instances running daily around the world. There are 285 different Telegraph plugins, makes Telegraph our most popular project. There are 814 contributors just in 2020 alone. There are 700 plus commercial customers who we are super thankful that allow us to invest in Influx and grow this code base and grow the utility of the platform. And now there's an expanded community that includes 17,000 cloud accounts who are running. And I would urge you all, even if you're committed deeply to the open source platform and never plan on being a commercial customer, sign up for a cloud account. It's free, it's available. You can monitor your own open source Influx with it. It's particularly useful, and you can begin to see a little bit of how we're evolving the platform. And of course, those are across AWS, GCP, and Azure. And so if it's free, not worried, but if it's paid, you can use your billing with AWS, GCP, and Azure. And so this community represents a wide range of platforms and capabilities. And I think that's important going forward as we talk about where all this is going. So let's talk about the next 2 days. Most people don't really want to hear from me. They want to hear directly from Paul, and I'm just in the way. But I will walk you through this anyway. So over the next 2 days, I want to be able to share our vision for the platform and the roadmap to get there. So you've got a very real sense of how your investment in Influx pays off, whether it's a contribution, whether it's using it, whether you're giving us feedback, how that investment pays off. And the best way for you to see that is a roadmap we can communicate to the community broadly. And Tim will take you through that. We want to officially announce the GA of OSS 2.0 and announce a new open source project, which Paul will be talking about shortly. But I just want to stop for a second. OSS 2.0 is our most tested, most completely validated release we have ever shipped by a wide margin. We have kept it in beta for a long period of time. We have used deep components of it in our own cloud product. It is a ready-to-go platform, and the migration strategies to get across from 1.0 to 2.0 are very easy. So I want to show what we've been doing for the last 6 months, so that you know that we haven't just been sitting on our hands, or we haven't taken your contributions and incorporated them into the code base. And lastly, I want to introduce some fascinating users who've built their systems on InfluxDB. This is probably the most gratifying part of my job, is I get to meet these folks and hear how they've incorporated and the very cool things they're doing. We'll talk about that in a second. So I'll walk you through the agenda just so you know the 2 days. So these were the opening remarks, or these are the opening remarks. Paul will give the keynote shortly after I'm done. And then Ryan Betts, our VP of Engineering, we'll be talking about InfluxDB platform performance and the performance improvements and a variety of different things we've done over the last 6 months. You'll get a break. At 11:25 a.m., we'll talk about how Discover Financial modernizes observability with InfluxDB Cloud. My friend Kurt Schneider is the domain architect who's got a deep experience building services for large enterprises around monitoring and monitoring infrastructure and framework, has built a compelling platform with Influx, and super proud that Kurt was willing to come and talk with the audience. Barbara Nelson, our head of applications, will be talking about how you put a dashboard in that app. Basically, is how you build an app with visualizations directly on Influx. Scott Anderson will be talking about beyond downsampling, thinking about your data, your Influx data, and how to manage it and manage the storage of it over time. We'll do a wrap up. And then we have a happy hour and trivia. Chris Cirillo will be hosting. And then tomorrow, we'll jump into the kickoff. And this is the deep dive on the roadmap. Tim Hall will present, our VP of products. We'll go through the roadmap and give you a sense of where we're going and our community initiatives. We'll talk about the top 10 hurdles for Flux beginners. Those of you know, is Flux is a language we built specifically for time series to make the hard things possible. And we've seen a tremendous interest in the community of people building really cool stuff on Flux. But we'll continue to want to work on getting new people to use Flux to do powerful things. We'll take a break. And then one of my favorites is the Viracy Rubin Observatory, which is the largest, the most powerful land-based telescope on a mountain in Chile, has been using Influx for almost 2 years to instrument the telescope and a variety of systems and services that scientists are using. I thought this was really cool, and I really appreciate Frosty and Angelo coming to speak with our community today. They spoke with our employees last month, and it was really exciting. And then we'll be talking about Flux queries using with Grafana. And we're happy to bring Grafana Labs, our partner, to be able to talk about that. Many of you use Grafana for your visualizations, and we think it's really important that people be able to use Grafana and Influx well together. And luckily, both companies are committed to that. And then lastly, and then we'll take a break. And then we'll talk about seamlessly migrating your 1x data dashboards to 2.0 so that you have a very clear picture of how straightforward we've made it to migrate from 1x to 2.0. And we'll do a community update. Michael Hall, our community manager, will talk about the different initiatives in the community. And then lastly, we'll have Chris will do some closing remarks, and then we'll let you get back to your day jobs. Hopefully you'll tune in for as much as you can. Hopefully we'll maintain your interest. If you're invested in the project, this will be a particularly useful 2 days. So now, let me walk backwards a little bit. One of the things that when I joined and I started this partnership with Paul was very committed to the notion of a project with velocity. He's very articulate about projects are either growing or dying. They're either getting more contributors and getting more users, or they begin the slow process of death. And so we have, in some real sense, kept betting the company with bigger investments, a deeper commitment to the platform, and a deeper commitment to the community. And I just want to walk you through a little bit of that. And so it started with the DB itself. And Paul's simple vision was, why reinvent the wheel? Everybody who's writing a time series application is having to take a relational database and build a bunch of application logic on top of it. And it's a very, very crude way to do that. And Paul deeply committed to open source and began the original InfluxDB. That was in late 2013. So it's got a life of its own. It's got a hardiness. It's got a reliability. And obviously, it's got a community around it. Shortly after that, shortly a couple of years after that, we began introducing the idea of the whole platform. And Telegraph are probably our most successful open source project, or our largest distribution open source project. InfluxDB, Chronograph, and Capacitor, we introduced the concept of a tick stack. And most of you have either used or built around that tech stack using all the components, some of the components, working with Grafana or integrating with other platforms. But it's been the core of our business since 2015. We introduced InfluxDB Cloud, the cloud native product, earlier this year, actually towards the end of last year. And that represented a very significant step for us in that we took the original tech stack and we built it into an elastic serverless cloud native platform. A very big investment for the business and very much tied to an emerging code base, which you now see in OSS 2.0. And now what we're announcing today is the general availability of InfluxDB 2.0. Those bits will be available shortly, and we'll walk you through what we were thinking when we built InfluxDB 2.0 and why the significant improvements over 1.x and the continuing line of products built around 2.0. And then we'll talk about next. And so Paul will talk about the details of next. He'll walk you through his vision for where the platform goes and some of the dynamics around it. But I'll try to cover it in some broad strokes. Is what we're essentially building is not simply just a database, but it's a platform to build and operate applications with time series at the core. And this is important because one is obviously our community has always been builders. We want people to play with it in the open source, in the cloud, in any way. We want them to be creative with it. We want them to figure out how to instrument things with it. We believe instrumentation is the foundation for artificial intelligence, for machine learning, for smarter systems. But we need builders to start by building and contributing. But then almost as importantly is in these days where developers are operating their applications and supporting them 7x24, they have to be able to operate the applications with time series at the core. The days are over when you throw your code over the fence and somebody else runs it. It's increasingly, if you built it, you're going to take at least partial responsibility for operating it. We now see that as the core of our vision, and we're trying to give you a platform, and we'll talk about platform in a second, that's capable of building on and operating on. And then the notion of time series at the core, we are very much in the early stages of dedicated time series platforms. Increasingly, we are instrumenting the virtual world. That's obvious in our systems and our software stack, but probably even more important, we're instrumenting the physical world. As I talk to you today, I'm wearing an Apple Watch. Those of you who are a Whoop band, I'm wearing a couple of other things that actually are metrics, what I'm really fascinated with about the way we collect data and the way we instrument different physical world things. And I think that's a super exciting dynamic. It sometimes gets cast under the notion of digital transformation, but it's much deeper than that. We're instrumenting the physical world. And Influx, we want to be the platform for you to build and operate those kind of applications on our platform. So what do we mean by platform? You know, platform is potentially the most overused word in technology, maybe broadly. But for us, it's really something specific, right? It means for us, open source, that's the foundation. Paul, we'll be talking more about that in a little bit here. Open source has to be the foundation for the next generation of infrastructure. We are deeply convicted that developers will build on open source first, is that the next generation of infrastructure will be open source based. And we're deeply committed to the MIT and Apache license model that allows a free and clear use of the open source software. Secondly is edge. Increasingly, people, and particularly in the IoT world, are doing 2-tier and 3-tier architectures where the databases are at the edge, or in some cases, even on the sensors themselves. The ability for the edge to have a relationship with the cloud or the enterprise or the cluster, however, is critical, right? No IoT, well, I shouldn't say that. Most IoT applications are going to require that, particularly as you push intelligence further to the edge. The cloud, we think obviously it's important. We see most consumption over the long term happening in a cloud format, whether that's a cloud where you've deployed into, or whether it's the cloud that Influx is running for you. It is cloud is central, it is core, it is part of the future, it is sort of irrevocable. And then lastly is the enterprise, right? So we continue to have people who really want to run on-prem, large clustered, distributed, and hopefully longer term federated platforms that run across region. We do not want to leave those customers behind in any way, shape, or form. They are very, very important to us, and that enterprise platform. And the idea is that you have a common API across all of those things, so that to the developer, to the builder, each component looks alike, works together. That's what we mean by platform. We don't mean sticking a database in the cloud. We don't mean stranding a database only in the open source availability. We mean all of these things being available with a common API. That's our vision. That's our future. We're building to that. We're pretty far along in big pieces of it, and we're excited to talk about it today. So let me lastly end by talking about what we aspire to. So here, we aspire to develop a platform so useful and so powerful that you want to build a significant part of your career with it. It's an instrument you've learned how to use. You realize how powerful it is. You realize you can be creative with it. You realize you can apply it to a variety of situations. And so having that in your skill set makes you a more useful developer and gives you a platform for which to operate on, not exclusively potentially, but importantly. We want you to take it from project to project and from company to company and build important instrumentation and applications around it. We want you to passionately contribute your expertise and experience to the project and the community. And we are super thankful that's exactly what's been going on for these last 5 years. We don't want that to stop. In fact, we want that to accelerate. The Influx platform is beyond Influx itself, that's for sure. And then lastly, we want it to last for 30 years and longer and fueled by an amazing community. You've all seen the progress of Postgres and how it's matured, and you've seen other databases mature over periods of time, right? There's a good model for how these things last and get better and better and do not stay static. We are deeply committed to that model, and we're willing to be held accountable for those actions. So, and lastly, what we need from you as you think about these next couple of days and the things you're building and the things you're doing and learning is hold us accountable, right? These are strong statements. We're trying to build something that's very aggressive. We're trying to build something that's very big. We're certainly trying to build something that outlasts us. In order to do that, we need to be held accountable. Make us better in every way. And that's largely feedback, critical or not critical. You know, we're willing to get our feelings hurt a little bit. We're willing to be told we're wrong. We're willing to be told a variety of different things. We just want to hear. And lastly, what we need from you is contribution and participation. And that participation can be code, that can be feedback, that can be projects, it can be whatever you think is appropriate. I want to thank you for the contribution and participation that's gone on so far, and really appreciate your help in building this project. This project is bigger than us.